Very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be here for the tutorial on the identification of medicinal products, in short IDMP. My name is Robert Stegway, and I'm a co-lead of Work Package 1 within the UNICOM project on IDMP-related standards and terminologies. I won't tell you a lot about the UNICOM project. I refer you to the website that's listed here. So, identification of medicinal products. What are we talking about? Basically, we can look at the story of Ingrid. Ingrid is a very lovely Swedish lady who went on holiday, a well-deserved holiday with her family. And while in Greece, she runs out of medication. And she was taking Sweet Dreams that was prescribed to her in Sweden. And she tries to get a refill from the local pharmacy. And the local pharmacy looks at the package and says, well, I don't have this, but I do have Sweet Dreaming. And when she takes this, she really suffers. It's really going bad with her. So that something went wrong there. And how would IDMP help to avoid this nightmare? That is the idea behind this introductory story about what is IDMP and how can it help medication safety and safety of patients in general. So how do we do that? This is not what we want to happen. What we do see with IDMP is that it's a set of standards, actually ISO standards, also European standards, and there are a number of situations in which we need IDMP just to have safe healthcare, so to provide the healthcare providers with information. Also, which is the case in many countries, there's a stream of falsified medicines that we want to curb. We also want to make sure that we can make safe substitutions, like Ingrid, who ran out of Sweet Dreams and needed a substitution. But also we want to make sure that we learn from what goes wrong. So in case of Ingrid, what went wrong and how can we avoid that in the future? So that's the four main purposes of having a global identification of medicinal products. And they're captured in 5 standards. It starts with the substance. What's the active substance in a medication, or what are the active substances? How is it presented to the patient? What's the dose form? Is it a tablet? Is it an injection? Is it whatever it is? So the dose form. What's the strength? Of course, there's different strengths that might be relevant. And those 3 together make up a medicinal product. And of course, the medicinal product itself needs to be packaged. And that's the outer layer of what we call the wedding cake of the 5 standards that together are IDMP. But we're not here to go into the standards, but really to understand how they work and why they work and what's in it for me as a patient or as a regulator or as a pharmacist. So if we look at the manufacturer of Sweet Dreams, what does the manufacturer know related to the identification of Sweet Dreams? MMP company, they know and they have developed a new substance called Zivacom, and it has been tested in multiple clinical trials across the world. So once that's done, they need to get market authorizations, specifically in Sweden. That's where Ingrid bought Sweet Dreams. So they needed to have that market authorization there. And for that, they have to submit a dossier on the medication to the Medical Products Agency. What's in the dossier? At least there's a description of the substance. There's the dose form. It's a coated tablet. It has a strength. It is 20 milligrams per tablet. And they also need to submit the results of the clinical trials, but also the design of the clinical trials for the regulator to really have a good notion of whether this is a safe medication. It has been properly tested. And also there's some information that they need to submit that is judged by the Medicines Agency to make sure that it's presented well. So there's a summary of product characteristics, which is really the professional part, the labeling, what's on the package, and what's the leaflet, what's the insert in the package that tells the patient what to expect in terms of side effects, in terms of what it is, et cetera, and how it has to be taken, and what the dose, the actual dosage is. In terms of identifiers, because IDMP is really about identification and identifiers, there will be a global substance identifier, say ABC123. And once the market authorization is provided, there will be a market authorization number, which is assigned by the Swedish Medicinal Products Agency. There will be a medicinal product identifier, and a package identifier, and a GTIN. And the GTIN really is the barcode on the package, as you can see here. So there's things from the research part, there's things from the manufacturing part, and there's things from the packaging part, because all three of them take have a role in actually identifying a medicinal product. What's interesting and crucial to understand is that a global substance identifier needs to be supplied by someone. There needs to be a global agency that actually distributes and controls these global identifiers. We've listed here the WHO UMC, which is the World Health Organization's collaborating center called the Uppsala Monitoring Center. Just happens also to be in Sweden, but it could be a different one. But the WHO UMC is doing a lot of work in this area and carrying out pilots in providing these global identifiers. So if that's done by MMP company, they might want to also market sweet dreams in other countries. And then a similar process takes place. So again, we have to go to the national competent authority in that country, and it may have a different name, like Durev or Süße Träume or Oneira Glika in Greek. So those are the names and things that they choose to use, and they will have different identifiers. The global substance identifier, of course, will remain the same, but all the other identifiers are different for the different versions of the same medication. So that's why the Greek pharmacy couldn't find the right substitute for sweet dreams and came up with something that looked like it, because there was no really similar name or package or identifier out there. There will be a PHP ID as specified by IDMP, and that's what we're looking at right now as the global identifier that will link those products. So prior to initial marketing authorization, the Swedish National Competent Authority will contact, again, the WHO UMC to provide a PHP ID, and it's calculated based on the characteristics of the product. So the substance, the strength, and the dose form. And that PHP ID will be shared by M&P company wherever they go. So also with the applications in other countries, it will remain the same. It will have the same identification, the same PHP ID. And we'll see how that will be used to make life safer for Ingrid, but also for others in the medicinal world. How will it help Ingrid? Ingrid at least can be confident that the information that's supplied by M&P company is accurate and available. It's being checked by the National Competent Authority, and the identifiers that were mentioned on the previous slide are stored in Sweden's medicinal product dictionary. So there is a place where this information is available. The GTIN, of course, is stored there as well. So if she takes her package with the barcode or the data matrix, then there is a way to actually lead anyone to the information that's in the Swedish Medicinal Product Dictionary. And the PHP ID will be the same everywhere and allows actually to navigate across medicinal product dictionaries in different countries. Actually, they are linked together to make available the relevant information in different countries, even though they are under the control of different national competent authorities. But given that they have one common global PHP ID, that you can navigate from one medical product dictionary to the other to find out what's the name of this product in another country. And that's what's going to happen. But I'll tell you a little bit more about medicinal product dictionaries first, because they play a key role in actually storing and disseminating the information around medicinal products. Especially, they are the basis for all the information that's needed in a hospital or by a doctor or by a pharmacy in prescribing medication and actually filling a prescription for a patient. So what does a medicinal product dictionary contain? Here you have the 5 types of information that are at least, they may be included in a medicinal product dictionary. Usually they do. It's the information that's provided by the national competent authority. So that's the leaflet, the product characteristics and the identifiers. But it might be complemented by scientific documentation telling a doctor when to use it, how it has been studied, and what the side effects were, etc. It might also include the medicinal product dictionary may say that this medication is okay, but we have a preferred substitution. There are countries that say, well, we want to have only specific brands or generics of a particular medication to be prescribed to a patient, unless there is a good reason not to do that. So the preferred substitution might be part of the medicinal product dictionary as well as insurance and pricing information. Is this actually covered under the insurance scheme in this country? And what's the price that can be paid? And of course, there's also guidance in there that's not typically part of the regulated product information, but things like dose recommendations or even calculations, depending on things like age, gender, and other patient characteristics may come from a medicinal product dictionary as well. So a medicinal product dictionary is really a very rich tool that bundles all the information that's necessary to have a safe prescription dispensing and actually taking of medications in a country, and bundles all the knowledge around safe medications that's available. Of course, it will also support the local language in order to be able to communicate well with the patients and the healthcare professionals. But it's not that people just go to the MPD. Usually the MPDs are accessed through other information systems, like the prescription modules in the hospital within the electronic health record systems, but also, as we will see later, apps on the smartphone of consumers can also be used to actually access that information, for instance, through the barcode or the data matrix that's on the package. And also pharmacy management systems will access the MPD and provide that information as part of the workflow within the pharmacy. So the MPD is really the way to store, process, bring together, and disseminate the information that's necessary for safe for medication safety. Now let's go back to these MPDs. I said the PHP ID allows to link together the medicinal product dictionaries across countries. So if we look at these 5 countries, they all have a market authorization for what we call, in Sweden at least, sweet dreams, and in this story we call it sweet dreams. But if you look at the identifiers, the market authorization number is different across all countries. The only stable identification is the PHP ID. It has the same number across all countries, whereas the MP ID might be different. The package ID and the barcode might also be different. But this information is stored in all these different MPDs, but it does mean that someone who has access to that cloud of linked medicinal product dictionaries can actually navigate across countries using the PHP ID to find out whether Sweet Dreams is the same as a product that's marketed and that has a market authorization within another country. So that's what should have happened to Ingrid. Of course, as we said, Sweet Dreams is Ingrid's prescription in Sweden. It works very well. And when she goes to the pharmacy in Greece on her holiday, actually the local pharmacist should have been able to scan the data matrix on the package that Ingrid brings and assess from that what the PHP ID of that product is. That's probably stored in the Swedish MPD because the data matrix shows that it's a Swedish product. So you navigate to the Swedish MPD, get the PHP ID from that product, and then go back to your Greek medicinal product dictionary and actually find out, well, what's our Greek equivalent? Is there a Greek equivalent of Sweet Dreams on the market in Greece? And it turns out that that's Onara Glika. Of course, Monica will look at the information in the MPD to actually check whether it's the same, not just trusting the PHP ID. Of course, it will give her the access to the proper indication, but she has to look at the characteristics. And one of the characteristics that might be quite different is that it's only available in 16 tablets, whereas Ingrid used to have packages of 20 tablets. Well, that's not a main difference, and it's enough for Ingrid to use through the rest of her holidays. So that's really what should have happened. So if you know what the medication is, can we find the local equivalent of that that medication? And if so, then we can safely prescribe it to this patient. So that would have been the added benefit of having IDMP installed in all the systems for Ingrid, and to actually make sure this doesn't happen. There's another story that I would like to share with you, and that's the story of Elena. This also comes from the Unicom project, and but it focuses much more on the overall patient experience. So let's listen to Elena's story.
Once upon a time, in a not so distant future, Elena sets off from her home in Athens, Greece, on a flight to Brussels. She's highly regarded as a top lawyer in international business, and she travels frequently. Despite her recent diagnosis of hyperthyroidism requiring daily medication and her sensitivity to lactose and gluten, which makes eating out difficult, she'll never say no to a new opportunity. This time, Elena is visiting new clients based outside of Brussels in a small town. She arrives by train in time to meet her clients for lunch, and as usual, does her best to avoid allergens. She'll be presenting this afternoon and needs to deliver her best performance. About an hour later, as she's going over documents with her client, she's distracted by a jabbing intestinal pain. Oh no, she cringes. It's one of the most common symptoms likely related to something she ate at lunch. She looks in her bag desperately for her allergy medicine, but she doesn't have it. She starts to panic and her stomach ache is getting worse. She excuses herself from the office and on her smartphone finds the closest shop where she can buy over-the-counter medicine. It's a small town local market, not a pharmacy, and the clerk doesn't speak English or Greek. Elena locates the medicine section, opens the Unicom app on her phone, and begins scanning barcodes of products on the shelf. Though she can't read what's written on the packages, in the app, she has direct access to the electronic product information in her own language. Thanks to this handy feature, she quickly finds 3 Belgian products that should help her stomach feel better. Since Elena has integrated her Greek patient summary in the app, she can also make more personalized queries. She wants to check if these medicines contain lactose, gluten, or if there are any known drug-drug interactions with her prescription medication and other supplements that she takes daily. Only then will she feel confident to make the best choice without the help of a pharmacist or a doctor. The app identifies the Belgian medicinal products and automatically analyzes them with her allergies and medication list. Based on the results of the analysis, Elena is able to eliminate 1 drug because it has gluten and 1 that interacts with her thyroid medication. She is so relieved. Potential disaster avoided. Elena purchases the safest medicine with confidence and takes a dose immediately without having any doubts or concerns. She's determined to get back for her presentation and certain her discomfort will soon pass. Her Greek patient summary is automatically updated in the app with the Belgian product. This will be helpful to have on record for her next doctor visit, just in case. That was a close call, she exclaims under her breath as she returns to the office just in time. She'll likely double check that she has her allergy meds before departing on her next trip. But at least she knows that when in need, she can resolve her medicine needs quickly, effectively, and safely under stress in a foreign country.
So that's Elena's story, and what it's all about is to prevent adverse drug events. So IDMP helps to make sure even Ingrid in the first story, but also Elena in the second story, don't have adverse events by using drugs. So how do we do that? It's actually, as I said, linking the data that's in the medicinal product dictionaries, not only across borders, but also to personal health data. So your health data about allergies and intolerances, but also medication interactions could be included as well. And that type of personal health data is actually contained in what was commonly called the International Patient Summary. It's the IPS. And the MPD will provide, of course, the substance identification and the global PHP ID for all the medication in the IPS list and also in the IPS allergy list. So what are the substances that I'm allergic to or that I'm intolerant for? And then of course, the medication safety monitoring will be able to use that information and make sure that that you get alerted for possible adverse drug events, like Elena did using her smartphone, where it identified the types of over-the-counter medication that that would have resulted in an adverse drug event. So that's the patient and direct patient care part. But there's also a part to it that's really called pharmacovigilance. So really looking at how can we make sure that we understand what's happening with medication and where we need to be alerted on adverse events and how to study them. So the aggregation of the global data on these adverse drug events, that's part of the work of WHO UMC. And you have to be able to actually identify the drug. Of course, the doctor will report it to the National Competent Authority, but that's using the local identifiers. The NCA will then contact the manufacturer or the marketing authorization holder, and both will also inform upwards to the global authority and in Europe also to EMA. And once we have IDMP compliant reporting in place, it will include not only the GTIN and the batch number as usual, but also the PHP ID and the MPID. And by having that PHP ID in place, it's easy to find similar cases of adverse drug events with the same pharmaceutical product, because PHP ID again is the pharmaceutical product identifier. So if there is a similar pharmaceutical product out there that has the same adverse events, we can group them together and actually find out what's happening. So look at what happened to Ingrid and see how the global pharmacovigilance network can take action. Ingrid was actually in Greece when she took her medication that caused her so much trouble, but she traveled back to Sweden. So Sweden had to report the use of a foreign medication. And by using the PHP ID, the NCA in Sweden knew that this was sweet dreaming or a similar medication in Swedish, available on the Swedish market. Of course, Ingrid wouldn't know because she just bought sweet dreaming in Greece. But they know what it is. And WHO UMC, together with the NCAs in Sweden and Greece, and the manufacturer or marketing authorization holder in Greece, could work out what could have happened, what could have been the cause for Ingrid to have these bad reactions. And of course, her doctor, Karina in Sweden, plays a role in that as well. So together, the experts from the different parties, hospital, competent authorities, the marketing authorization holder, they could find out what was actually wrong. What was the particular condition that triggered this adverse drug event? And once they find that out, they can add those warnings, not only to sweet dreaming in Greece, but in all countries where sweet dreaming or equivalent medicinal products are available. So they can add this to the insert that's in the package and say, well, beware, if you have this condition, you should not take this drug event because the likelihood of having an adverse drug event is very high. So that's how the global pharmacovigilance network takes action in preventing adverse drug events. And that's where medication safety also comes in at a global scale and also at a long-term scale, not at the individual patient level, but at the group level, at the population level. So that's the story. What were the objectives of the IDMP set of standards? We covered most of them. I didn't go into reducing risk of falsified medicines very much, but I did cover the other ones. How does it help the doctor, the pharmacist? How do we make sure that we can have safe substitutions? And how can we help report and analyze these adverse drug events? And you might have noticed that I've taken the view of the whole life cycle of the medicinal product. I started with development and production. What was the M&P company doing? What did they know? How did they apply for market authorization? What did the regulator look at in that authorization? How did they actually assign the proper identifiers with the help of the global center in WHO UMC? And then how is that information made available through the medicinal product dictionaries in the different countries? And how can that help in prescribing and dispensing the medicinal products? And of course, at the end, you have to see what happens to the patient. So the utilization, actually taking the drug and assessing what's going on with that patient. And if there's an adverse drug event, it needs to be reported back, and the circle is closed in the life cycle. So those are the important places where identifiers take a role. So if we want to know more about this, I've told the story more or less along the same lines as a publication that we recently published It's called IDMP in a capsule. So it's really in a nutshell, but of course, in this world, we call it a capsule. Please read it. It's easily downloadable. And if you have any comments, then please also send them to us. There's the chapters follow this life cycle model, and every chapter is also includes a number of questions to just see whether you have understood what IDMP is about and what's the difference between the different identifiers and how they are being used. Of course, the answers are provided at the back of the publication as well for you to check. So please, if you have more needs in getting more out of this than just this tutorial, please go there or contact us. It's also a call to action, because Unicom is busy helping a lot of these players along the life cycle of a medicinal product to implement IDMP. So the pharmaceutical companies and regulators really need to implement this, so the information can be shared with the medicinal product dictionaries, and that information can then be used safely in the IT solutions that the doctors use for prescribing medication, and also by the patients that are buying over-the-counter medication. So only if that MPD information is available to IT applications, then can we actually influence the safety of the use of medication in real life. And of course, in the end, as we mentioned, public health organizations can respond much more quickly if we use the right identifiers, and can more easily see patterns across countries based on the same product or the same substance, to actually identify, hey, there's a risk in this medication that people need to be aware about, or it needs to be recalled. Something is wrong with this medication, so we need to actually actively seek out everyone who has bought this medication or has been prescribed this medication to actually get it back and not to be used. That's what IDMP is about. It's about making medication safe for everyone from start to finish of the life cycle of a medicinal product. Thank you very much for your attention, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. Someone will be here to answer your questions as well. Thank you.